període de transferències, aquest mercat de fitxatges de cara a aquesta temporada. Compareixeran avui el vicepresident esportiu Jordi Mestre i el director esportiu Andoni Zubizarreta.
Okay, so good afternoon to our live coverage of today's press conference with Andoni Zubizarreta and Jordi Mestre. And we're going to start with a video showing the new signings this season.
Doncs aquestes eren les cares noves d'aquest nou projecte, que de moment ha començat molt bé.
So those were the new signings for the season. So we're going to start with this press conference where we're going to be making a review of the season. Jordi Mestre would like to speak first. So the transfer window ended last night. And today we'd like to make a review of the last few months. The aim is to be transparent in our explanation to the members about what we've been doing for the last few months. This board insists that it shall always provide information about what it's doing in the sports department. We're the only club in the world that acts like this, but that's what makes us a special club. We want to highlight our singularity. Last season, Bartomeu said that he wished to restructure in depth the squad, and today we're going to be showing how we have indeed done that. We've done one of the biggest reshuffles of the squad for many years. We're one of the clubs in Europe that's made the most changes to its squad, 24 different movements, which we'll be speaking about in a moment. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the coaches and players that have left the club. So now I'm going to comment a little on the changes that have been made. Here we've got a summary of the movements of the pre-season. So I'll say some words, but Andoni will speak in more detail. Signings: Ter Stegen, Rakitic, Bravo, Mathieu, Luis Suarez, Vermaelen and Douglas. Jordi Mestre, promoted from the B team. Recovered from loan, Rafinha and De La Feu. Transferred out, Cesc, Alexis, Dos Santos, Bojan and goalkeeper Oyer. Loaned out, Teo, Denis Suarez, who was given a first-team registration this season, Deulofeu, Afelai and Song. Ending their contracts, Victor Valdés and Pinto. Terminated contract, Cuenca, and voluntary departure, Carlos Puyol. That makes 24 changes in total.
Now
I'm going to hand over to Andoni, who's going to speak about each particular case individually. Thank you. Everybody, good morning. I don't like to talk about numbers, really, because these are professional footballers that we're talking about. I think you from the press, you know how we work in the sports department, how we monitor players and we monitor the market. Generally, things start in April. They started in April this year. It was a week before Tito left us. And the different members of the sports department met, spent a couple of days reflecting on perhaps what we needed to do and the condition in the market. It's something that we have to do every year, but perhaps this year it was a slightly more, a bigger process. There was a lot more involved, and we had to analyze all the different situations that could arise. We had to discuss all different players, and obviously also we had to worry about the coach situation. So the summer transfer window really begins in spring. We'd already made our decision regarding goalkeepers, Ter Stegen. We knew that Tata Martino wouldn't be continuing as manager. So first we had to decide who was going to be the new manager, who we thought would be appropriate for the task. Well, I think when we spoke about Luis Enrique, we needed somebody who was tactically aware, who knew what the team was like. It was someone who knows the club inside out, who understands the way that we play, who understands the challenges and the energy that we need to look after a team like this, and particularly given the circumstances last season. There was some kind of a loss of energy and vigor at the end of last season. We really needed to recharge the batteries right from the start, and obviously Luis Enrique is the person who satisfies those requirements. So if I can just briefly describe the organigram, well, there's Juan Carlos Nsue, former goalkeeping coach. He's now dealing with the whole team. He's someone who knows all about the game. Robert Moreno, he's also going to be helping him. He's also done a lot for analysing the opponents before we play them, and so we know how to adjust our training sessions for future games to make us better in those games, but also generally better as a team to know what we need to do in training to make ourselves better there. Joan Barberá, he's the technical assistant, also helping out in training, and also he does a lot of coordination work with the Barça B and with the youth team. He's worked before with those teams, so he knows how our youth system is progressing and what players we have in the B team. So perhaps that's his most important role. He participates in B team coaching sessions, but also with ourselves. He's a link between those two. Then we got Rafael Pau, who's the fitness coach. Joaquim Valdés is a psychologist. Luis Enrique has explained what kind of work he's going to be doing. there's a high level of demand for psychological demands made of the players. So Joaquin is going to be contributing all of his experience to that department. And finally, José Ramón de la Fuente. He's been working with us for several years now, and he's going to be remaining now in charge of the goalkeeping coach. Okay, if I can just make a very rapid look at the players that we've signed. Okay, well, here's Jordi Mestre, who's been doing such a good job with the B team, and he's got every right to be promoted into the first team. He had an extraordinary year last year, but he's also been at the club for a long time. And he's perhaps always been, perhaps not really been indicated as someone who was going to make it into the first team, but he's always shown dedication, and he's got there on the basis of some great hard work, and he's a good enough player to start first team matches. Rafinha, he was on loan to Vigo. He's a player who we know obviously because he was here before. He played in Barça B. We know about his talent, how great he is at making a difference in games, and he's very versatile. He can play either in a central position, or he can play out wide, as he did against Villarreal the other day. An obviously talented player, as is Ter Stegen, someone we've been following for a long time. This is where the big changes have been made, because all three of our goalkeepers have changed. We've made changes to the whole team, but in goalkeeper, the most profound changes of all. We know he's got an injury with his vertebra, but he's recovering well. He's ready to rejoin league matches and to be at the command of the coach. Ivan Rakitic is a player, we've already seen how well he's integrated with the way that we play. He plays as a central playmaker, he can do. He's very good at sending balls forward. He's got a lot of personality in the way that he plays football. Claudio Bravo, who's played the first two league games of the season, and he's already shown himself as very secure in that position. He's a player who's always got his eyes looking forward. He's one of the great goalkeepers around at the moment. He knows this league very well. And there's going to be competition between him and Ter Stegen and Masip. That I think is going to be an important factor this season. But Bravo is a very experienced player. He knows what kind of requirements are going to be made of him. Jeremy Mathieu. He's a player who plays in defence, but he can also play on left wing. He's an extraordinarily competitive player. He's been named for France for the next international matches, and I congratulate him for that. I think he's someone who's going to do a lot for our defence. Thomas Vermaelen, he's played high-level competition in the past. Again, he's a centre-back who can play on the left wing if he needs to, but he's been signed here to play predominantly as a centre-back. He's a highly competitive player. He also adds something different to the team, so he's someone that the coach can use if he wants to take a different kind of approach to the play. He's someone who'll be switching with Bartra, with Mascherano, to perhaps add different elements and options to the way that we play our football. Luis Suarez, well, the best striker in the English Premiership last season. We've described here when he gave his press conference just what he's like. He's going to give us a lot more options in attack. We know what an incredible goal scorer he is, how well he combines with his fellow forwards. At Liverpool he played in all kinds of different positions in attack. He's great at getting into the area and basically scoring goals. Douglas, he's only been here for a few days, but he's a player who will add a lot more depth to our wing play down the right. He's a right back, but he tends to advance. He's a typical traditional Brazilian wing back who moves up the right. And so that completes the squad. Here we have the numbers for this season. That's a squad that's going to bring results to us this season. to compete in what I believe is the strongest league in Europe.
Cesiones que hemos concretado
Okay, talking about loans, Christian Theo, we decided that it was time that he should be playing more constant football. He helped us a lot last season, but we think it's important for him to be playing constant football. So he's playing in Porto, where he's going to be playing Champions League football, and I think he's going to continue developing as a player. So I think this is a good thing for us. I think he's a player who could do a lot for Barca in the future. Now Ibrahim Ifalai, he's been with us for a while. Injuries haven't helped him while he's here. Now he's off to Olympiacos. But I think he's a very, very talented player. And I think he'll show that, a chance to show that while he's in Greece. Deulofeu, he was in Everton last season. We decided that probably the best thing for him would be to go somewhere where he could continue playing competitive football. In this case, we opted to send him to Sevilla. He's definitely got the talent to play at this club. But there are high demands. But as you know, here at Barca, we've already got so many strikers already. Finally, Song, who a couple of days it was announced he's going to be going to West Ham. I think he knows English football better than any football, and he played at a high level there before, and I think he'll get a chance to show himself once again. That having been said, and if I can just conclude this little part, I think someone said in the Barca magazine the other day that whenever you make changes, the most important thing is what stays. We've still got our idea of players. We've still got La Masia with players coming through from there. We've seen that with the last two games with the youngsters, how well they've played. And we already know what quality players we have in the first team. Those players that haven't left, those that we already have. We've got some great new signings, but we've also got some players that have got amazing capacity, that have shown how much we can enjoy watching them play football. And hopefully this team can get right back to the level that's required of the team, which is right at the top of European football, and playing the kind of football that people identify our name with. This next part is economics, so I'll hand you back to Jordi Mestre. Yeah, here you've got a summary of the costs of the operations this season, of the signings. The numbers are in millions of euros. Suarez was signed in English pounds, but we've used the exchange rate to change that into euros. On the right, you've got the variables referring to each player. With Vermeulen, you've got those 5 million that depend on certain success, basically Champions Leagues that are won. Move to transfers, players going out. These are the amounts that we made from each player in euros as before, and the variables that are involved in those costs. Okay, finally, to look at the organigram of the sports department. Okay, the director of sport, well, that's me, Andoni Zubizarreta. My assistant is going to be Carlos Puyol, as we've announced before. When he decided that the time had come to stop playing football, we persuaded him to stay at the club. On the 15th of September, he'll be definitively starting work. He'll be back at the club, not wearing a football, but wearing a suit and a tie like I am, although in fact he's not wearing a tie today. But professional football will be coordinated by Narcís Julià. That's really the part that I'm in charge of. He's responding to me. There have been changes also with the people in charge of the other teams. There you got Barça B, which is Eusebio Sacristan, and Carlos Hugo, his assistant. The youth A team, under 18s, Jordi Viñals and Josep Muñoz. Okay, there have been changes all the way through. We've got Guillermo and Albert Puig, who are going to be working, Guillermo Amor, who will be going to be working in charge of the youth team, but Amor is leaving. And now we've got Jordi Roura, former first team manager or stand-in manager. He's going to be working with the youth system. And we're going to be working to integrate all of those different departments together. And then we've got women's football. That's going to be run by Xavier Llorens. Okay, we've got what we call the transversal department. Methodology, that's going to be the job of Paco Seurio and Joan Villa, adding a different vision perhaps to the way that we look at football and how we can incorporate that throughout our structure, not just in the first team, but all the way down through the youth teams. Also the girls team, not forgetting the women. Looking to the future in all those different departments, their job is to develop the kind of methodology that we've got. We've got sports relations, which is going to be Pere Gratacos's job, and for the fourth year, we've got the man who's in charge of the goalkeeping department. We think is that specific area that requires its own specific department. That's Ricard Segarra. So he works on how we integrate goalkeeping in our training sessions, because sometimes they work as a group, sometimes they work separately. Well, that's the end of the presentation. So basically now we're going to hand ourselves over to you. Okay, now it's time to hand over to the press for questions.
Bon dia, Míriam Nadal, per Barça TV. El president del Barça parlava a final de la temporada passada de remodelació profunda.
Okay, you spoke about an in-depth restructuring of the team. Are you satisfied with the restructuring? Is it as deep as you call in-depth?
Tal com estan en l'equip, quines són les primeres sensacions que teniu?
And can you just, how do you feel really after the first few games?
Per part de la Junta, nosaltres creiem que s'ha fet una remodelació molt a consciència.
Here at the board, we think we've been very conscientious, taking our time and meditating, premeditating all of our decisions. We're very hard with our three goalkeepers and with all the players. We're very, very happy.
En un proceso como este, lo que hemos intentado, lo he dicho desde el principio, es volver a tener un equipo o estar en una plantilla.
What we want to do was to get a squad that we think is ready to compete at the highest of levels. And really, you don't really see that until we actually start playing competitive matches. We also had a lot of things were based on what we think that we've got, but we think looking at the team in the first two games, you can recognize that that's Barça playing. And we're very happy with the resources that we've got at our disposition. Okay, now it's a question of developing that and looking at different options that we've got with the players we've got, the different solutions and interpretations of the way that we can play. But we think that we're exactly where we wanted to be, with the squad that we wanted to be able to compete.
Hola, bon dia. Bernat Soler, en directe pel canal Esport 3. Una pregunta per l'Andoni Zubizarreta. S'ha acabat el mercat, ja no podrem preguntar.
Okay, so the transfer window is closed. We can't talk about any more signings. But we can talk about renewals of contracts, etc.
En quin punt està una possible renovació o millora de contracte o revisió del jugador Munir, ara que...
We would like to talk about Munir and his contract, whether it's going to be renewed, whether it's going to be improved.
I el vicepresident esportiu m'ha
Question for Mestre.
Quin és el paper del vicepresident esportiu en totes aquestes operacions?
What exactly does the Vice President of Sport do in these negotiations? The Vice President of Sport being Jordi Mestre. Surely it's Zubizarreta's job, so what exactly do you do when discussing transfers, who's coming and who's leaving the team?
Dentro de todos los jugadores que son jugadores de proyección, eso que yo alguna
We've got a lot of players here who've got, let's say, a lot of future. We know that they're there, we know who they are. We know that they're ready to compete in the first team. When we've given Munir chances, he has shown that he can do it. So did Sandro the other day. We've got other players. We've got Grinaldo. We've got, well, these other different players that are in the B team that we think they've got a chance of playing in the first team and delivering when required. Munir, of course, we will be working with his agent and trying to work out what kind of ambitions he's got, what kind of long-term solutions we've got for him. And, well, hopefully it's going to be the best balanced situation, as much as you can talk about balance in football, because it's an industry that's changing on a day-to-day basis. But also we've got to watch, see how he grows as a player. But it's the same that we said with Dennis. You know, with Rafa when he was loaned out, with Adama, there are all these players that have got such a future. We're analysing them all to decide who's going to stay here and what we're going to do with them. Well, I can tell you rather what I do is what I don't do. I don't interfere with transfers when there are decisions that are going to be made in a sporting sense by the Director of Sport. I don't think that the Board of Directors should get involved in technical footballing issues. We can assist, but we don't override their decisions.
No esportives, sinó econòmiques i de contractes, les porta, com va dir el president, el director general i el...
We've made a change because now it's the General Director who particularly intervenes when it comes to deciding on transfers. But I'm here perhaps as a kind of intermediary between the board and between the people that are running the football department. And there is an institutional aspect that needs to be dealt with, and that's mine. Of course, me and Zubi have been in conversations since April talking about the different options that we had for restructuring the squad, what financial resources that we have available. But I think that I give him pretty much a free rein to make decisions as he wants to. If I could just compliment what he said, I think that he's been a fundamental aid to me in this decision, in these processes. I think he's been very useful for me because there are aspects to do with contracts and renewals where I've needed to discuss things with them, and he's been a fantastic help, and I very much appreciate that. We've been able to analyse different situations, different possibilities. He's really helped with executing certain decisions, for balancing different ideas. When there have been delays, he's been very supportive because he understands that there are certain things that need to be dealt with. When I've had doubts, he's always been very transparent. So I think if we can draw any conclusions, is that me and him are very much in line with each other. We understand each other. Okay, Dani Alves, he's got contract until 2017. What's this? Sorry, his contract's going to be extended to 2017. What's the situation basically with Dani Alves? Also, questions regarding Marcos Asensio. Well, there's nothing to be added because Mallorca don't want to sell the player, so there's no further thing we can say on that. As for Dani, we're delighted that Dani Alves is playing for the team. He's performing extremely well. We're very happy that he's wearing the Barça number 22 shirt. There has been a certain element of debate about his contractual conditions, but we've sat down, we've spoken about it, we've decided his contract at the moment ends in 2015, and that's how things are going to stay for the time being. If we extend his contract later on, well, I mean, things will depend on how things happen, but at the moment we're very happy to have him in the team.
Són dues qüestions, una sobre Alves. És per aclarir-ho del tot. Finalitza el 2015 sense cap possibilitat de...
Finalitza el 2015.
So you're saying his contract ends in 2015, Dani Alves, with no possibility of staying on at the team? With the team? And then he says, look, 2015 is the situation at the moment. We're not saying anything about his future. Okay, we're talking now about the FIFA ban on the next two transfer windows. What plan is in place for that for next season? Because how seriously are you going to be affected by the fact we can't transfer teams? Well, at the moment it's a question of working with the squad that we've got. working hard with what players we have at the moment, and so obviously we need to look at how things are going to be then. We know that we're going to be in a very unusual situation in terms of the market in 12 months' time. But also we're going to be fighting for our rights. Hopefully we can find a solution for this. But on a day-to-day basis, we're going to have to continue working in the same way. But obviously we're aware of the situation that will attack us in the future. And we'll be working with the players that we've got. And let's see what happens with the market next year. But like I say, we're going to have to work pretty much the same, but perhaps looking even more specifically at the players that we've got already, and perhaps with certain patterns to the way that we're working based towards what we're going to have to do in the future, because we can't change this. If that's the decision that happens, we're going to have to put up with it. But at the moment, it's a question of focusing on now.
Sí, Emilio Pérez de Rozas, del periódico. Una pregunta para el señor Mestre y dos para Andoni Zubizarreta.
Oof, got three questions, this guy.
Si existe dentro de la Junta Directiva del Barcelona una cierta preocupación por, digamos que da la sensación de que el área técnica dirigida por Andoni Zubizarreta ha hecho estos 24 movimientos y tal, y sin embargo también da la impresión de que la imagen de esta área técnica y especialmente de Andoni Zubizarreta está...
Is the board a little concerned that, all right, there have been 24 changes, but let's face it, the press and the fans, there's been a lot of criticism for Zubizarreta. Let's say that the signings perhaps haven't gone exactly as we'd perhaps hoped. I have to say we're delighted with Zubizarreta and his team. If we weren't, he wouldn't be sat here next to me today.
Criterio de la Junta, nosotros dentro de la Junta somos futboleros.
Look, we on the board, we may not deal directly with sporting issues, but we are still football people.
No. Sí que es verdad que algunos fichajes pues se comentan más que otros, pero
as regarding signings, obviously some signings get spoken about more than others, but I think that we're getting full guarantee from the work that Zubizarreta and his team are doing. I've known him for 4 years. We've been working together, and I'm very happy not only with his work, but with the work of his whole team.
El tema de la aparición de jugadores de la cantera que ahora se ha puesto en esta pretemporada.
Question about B-time players, which once again with Munir, Sandro, is a very fashionable thing.
Por la agitación que eso puede suponer en la plantilla, o
is that positive that it, or
conscientes de que son jugadores del filial, y en ese sentido
that's perhaps putting pressure on them and the first team, or are they very aware that they're really still Barça B players?
Y es perfectamente creíble por parte de todo el mundo, o hay quien piensa también, quiero ver si eso ocurre en el mes de febrero, ¿no?
Bueno, sé que ocurre en el mes de septiembre o en el mes de agosto.
You know, people thinking that maybe we get to February and there's going to be still relying on the B team. The way we've constructed the team over this pre-season has been quite unusual because it came on the back of the World Cup. We didn't know some things about the FIFA suspension that kind of affected the circumstances too. But also we know we've got very strong players in Barça B who are perfectly capacitated to play in the first team. Last year I remember saying it was a particularly young Barça B team, that perhaps last year they weren't able to help us quite as much, but this year they're all a year older and more mature, and I think they're going to help us a lot. I think that's a good thing for them. I think it's good for the first team that there's those players that can be relied on, but ultimately it's up to the manager to decide what teams go out and play the games. But the more options he's got, then surely so much the better. He'll be using Barça B players as much as he thinks is necessary.
Acabamos de oír a Cesc Fábregas decir que ha jugado toda su vida en el Barcelona lesionado. ¿Qué sensación?
Now, Cesc Fabregas, apparently he just said that he's played entire career at Barça injured.
Es un resumen un poco largo de lo de toda su vida.
Okay, well, that's quite a strange way of saying his whole life. But what I can say, he was always given the best medical treatment he could have wanted. We were always willing to put our club medical services at his disposal. We've always been there for him. And all I can say is wish Cesc the very best that I can now at his new club.
Hola, Andoni, Elena Condis, Cadena COPE. De todos los fichajes que ha hecho el Barça, ¿crees como Bartomeu que Luis Enrique es el más importante de todos?
Okay, do you think, like Bartomeu said, that of all the signings is Luis Enrique?
No, pero
well, if the president said that, I can't argue with him.
Todos son importantes.
They're all important. They're all important. All of the players that we've brought in, the ones that have stayed, those that have had to go for whatever reason, all important. But if we go back to the Marco Asensio issue,
jugador que es Maxi Rolón esperando hasta ayer a las 12 del mediodía saber si se iba a inscribir como jugador del Barça B o no, o si iba a ir.
We had a player who didn't know whether he was going to be a part of the Barça B team or whether he was going to be going somewhere else. And I'd like to thank him for showing. He's speaking about Denis Suarez, I believe, who I believe has gone to Lleida on. And you know, the players have been extremely patient because they've not known whether they're going to be playing in Barça B in the first team or wherever, and I'd like to thank them, the players who are here, for being very patient as well.
Voldria saber quina serà exactament la feina de Puyol i què n'espera.
Okay, can you sort of explain exactly what Carlos Puyol is going to be doing in the team?
Bueno, con Carlos estuvimos ayer hablando.
In fact, I was talking to him yesterday. He came to the training ground for a meeting.
A que pasase las horas del día 1 de septiembre, ¿no? Esperamos algunas gestiones de las que estábamos haciendo si tenían resultado positivo.
You know, there were a few certain things that we've been discussing together. He wanted to know how those plans were going. He's basically going to be helping with the whole matter of planning the first team, to do with signings and dealing with looking at different teams, and working on training methodologies, working on coordination between all the different professional departments here, with the youth club, with youth teams. And also it's a question of adding his knowledge. I think he's going to do a lot to help us with improving our training system. And he's someone who's fresh from playing in top-level competition, so I think he's got a lot of experience to offer us, because there's no one really amongst the technical team who's played that kind of level, and he was only really just a matter of days since he was last playing matches. I think he's going to help us with the whole direction of sport. He's always been someone who's offered a lot of help to us, not just as a player, but also, you know, just when he was sat on the bench. He's someone who knows, who's got a lot of knowledge to offer, and I think he's someone whose knowledge we should be exploiting. Also, he's someone who you could consider, he's got close relations because he's played with so many of the first team players, so I think it's going to be easier to have him there, who's someone who knows the players, and he's going to be able to help us very much on a personal level to stabilise all the different areas of the club. I think it's important that he's still here as their former captain, who can be with the players, to work with the youth teams. He'll be helping with the whole area of what we call the football department.
Hola, buen día. David Bernabéu de Deportes 4. Dos preguntas para Andoni Zubizarreta. La primera, bueno, habláis de 24 movimientos, creo que eran 10 caras nuevas.
24 movements, 10 new faces, now that Deulofeu has gone to
Quisiera preguntarte
Sevilla.
si pudieras volver atrás. Estamos hablando de 24 movimientos en un solo verano. Si pudieras volver atrás, teniendo en cuenta los resultados, los últimos resultados que tuvo el equipo, ¿volverías a hacer lo mismo?
If you could go back, if you could turn back the clock, would you do the same?
Cada temporada. Es decir, ¿puedes llegar a asumir que ha hado un error en eso o crees que no?
Do you think there have been mistakes made, basically? Can you say? Look, let's not make evaluations in that kind of way, because you can't compare the present to the past, there's the past and the present. You can't balance things because certain situations you didn't know. You can't change the past. That's something that we can't do. If we go back and look at squads in the past, people were saying last year was a disappointment. Remember, we were just one goal away from winning the league. We got to the cup final. It's not as if there were really big problems as far as competition is concerned. But there were uncertainties, and that there always are in football, but perhaps last year a little more than normal. But we always at the end of the season look at ways that we can make the squad better, and we did that this year. Question of Neymar and the autograph controversy today, and the club considering maybe penalising him in some kind of way.
Y porque el otro día, por ejemplo, en un calentamiento, pues de la imagen de firmar un autógrafo en pleno proceso.
Okay, what do you think about someone who's signing autographs in the middle of a warm-up session? No, we've got no problem with Neymar, no problem at all. There's no doubt that he's a fantastic footballer. We know that he had an injury during the World Cup, and even so we're seeing a lot of talent. Look, the matters to do with penalties, not the things that we sort out behind closed doors.
A raíz de la sanción de la FIFA, el Barça se había planteado incorporar jugadores contrastados, como ficharlos en este caso como Royce o Koke, cederlos y después volverlos
Okay, did you not think about Royce and Koke and players back signing them and then loaning them out, or even back to their own teams? Because of the FIFA suspension, those are very, very difficult situations, you know. It doesn't really make much sense to sign somebody and then loan them back to the team they were at before. It just seems like a strange thing to want to do. It wouldn't really bring any benefits to us. Okay, with these new teams, we've got 3 right-backs. Isn't that a bit odd? No, because players can play in different positions depending on the system that we use to play. It's like saying we've got Jordi Alba and Adriano playing in the same position. You know, I mean, what we have to do is just come up with the best players all round, so that you can develop a team around them. It's not that players really necessarily have to stick to the same position that perhaps is traditionally handed them as a label. And we put the players that we and the trainer together decided would be the best teams. I've got every confidence in Dani Alves. I've got in Montoya, 100%. Those are players that deliver at the highest level and that have got the right characteristics for playing in this team. And if they're in the team, it's because we think that they're good enough to play in the team.
Adrián Alves, de la cadena SER. ¿Por qué se descartó el fichaje de Cuadrado? ¿Fueron razones?
Why did you not sign Cuadrado? Was it because of finance, perhaps because of his position?
¿Qué nota le pondría a la plantilla?
Okay, and what mark would you give to the squad as you've got it? I never actually said anything about Cuadrado, so why should I now have to speak about whether or not we signed him? I will tell you, I think he's a fantastic player.
Un recorrido futbolístico amplio, grande, y es un jugador a seguir.
He's a player who's very much worth keeping an eye on and following.
No trabajamos así.
But he's not a Barca player, and I've never said that we were going to sign him, so I don't think I need to say anything more. Jordi Mestre, his mark out of 10 is 10 out of 10.
Hola, aquí. Buen día. David Ibáñez de Telecinco. Para Andoni. Acabas de decir sobre Dani Alves que el contrato acaba el 2015, el otro día el jugador dijo el 2016. Bueno, como esa diferencia entre vosotros dos y si...
You said Dani Alves, his contract is finishing in 2015, but he wants to stay till 2017.
El otro día también salió diciendo que le hubiera gustado que el club fuese más de cara.
Danny himself has indicated that maybe he would like the club to be a bit more upfront about these things. Do you think that you've not been speaking to him enough? No.
La conversación es fluida.
We've had fluid conversation with Danny.
Comunicado, está hablado con él y todo lo contrario. Danny es
no, I would totally disagree with that. But you know what Danny's like. He's a very competitive player and he's got a lot of character.
Yo discreparía de él solamente con el sombrero que sacó el otro día en la rueda de prensa.
Perhaps I wasn't that impressed with how he got his hat out in the press conference the other day, but no, I mean, he's part of we've always had very good relationships with him. If we look at the squads, comparing ours to that of Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, do you think it can compete with their squads? And do you think this is a team that would still be able to continue competing, assuming that FIFA's sanction stays ahead? Well, obviously, I think we've got a good squad. Otherwise, you know, I wouldn't be doing my job right. But to sit here and to compare our squad to that of Bayern and with Real Madrid, well, you know, I don't like to have to say that kind of thing, but I think, you know, I mean, let's wait as competition progresses this season. That's what we're here to do, to prepare ourselves for the future and when we're up in direct competition with those other great teams. We never know what's going to happen. We know how different things happen to us and how other different teams. But I think perhaps we've been quite wise with the way we've put together our team. But I think we've got a team that's going to be able to compete. But right now, on the 1st of September, I can't say exactly how things are going to go this season. And it's not right for me to compare our squad with squads that are not Barça. Are we ready? Yeah, of course we're ready for this season. Perfectly ready. But like I've said, you know, as for next season, you know, I mean, we'll speak at the end of next year's transfer period and, well, then ask me the same question then.
Usted acaba de decir que no descarta a ningún jugador. Quería saber por qué no se fichó a Benatia cuando recaló en el Bayern por solo 25 millones de euros.
He's asking about Benatia and why he went to Bayern Munich for 25 million years.
Cada uno elige lo que cree que tiene que elegir.
We went for Vermeer and we made our decision. We've also got Mathieu. It's not a question of rejecting certain players. You know, we're bidding against other teams and we make our actions when we do. We really wanted to have a left-footed centre-back, very important for us, and players who could perhaps also be able to play left side of midfield whenever called upon, because it adds an extra depth to the team.
En el cas de Tello, diu que la sessió és remunerada, però en els altres, com per exemple d'Olofeu, qui paga el sou d'aquest jugador?
Tello, he's being paid on loan.
O el Barça. I sobretot,
what about Delofeu? Who's paying his wages? Sevilla or Barça?
Aquesta temporada tenia per contracte que ja passava a ser un jugador de primera. I després la segona pregunta és, remetent-se a les declaracions de Dani Alves, senzillament, a banda de les relacions personals que puguin tenir, però desmenteixen llavors públicament el que va dir l'altre dia en roda de premsa. Ho desmenteixen?
So are you,
es va parlar posteriorment?
what's this about Dani Alves? Are you denying what Dani Alves said in his press conference, or did you speak about something afterwards?
Y conjuntamente hemos visto que la finalización era el 2015.
We've sat down together. I think there might have been a misunderstanding. We've sat down and we've reiterated that Dani Alves' contract ends in 2015.
Generalmente las sesiones, es que hay muchos casos, muchas situaciones y muchos, pero en el caso de la cesión de Gerardo Olofeu, el que se hace cargo del importe de la ficha es el Sevilla. En el caso de Suárez es lo he contestado antes con la de Munir. Son jugadores que nosotros planteamos cómo podemos construir ese futuro, que ya lo hicimos también con Gerard y con Rafinha, con sus cesiones, y pensábamos que esa cesión le va a ayudar a crecer como jugador. El Sevilla.
Okay, the situation with Delofeu basically is things vary with loans, but in this particular case, it's Sevilla who will be paying his wages. The question is about Denis Suarez, not Luis Suarez, Denis Suarez, and there was rumour that he may have been promoted from the B team given a first team registration, and in the end they decided no, that it would be better if he was to leave the club on loan and go to another club.
Operaciones a lo largo de este verano o desde la primavera, cuando empezasteis, no se han podido hacer o se han quedado a medio camino, se han frustrado por las razones que sean, económicas o de relaciones con clubes? ¿Cuántas operaciones has intentado empezar que luego no han llegado?
Okay, what about failed attempts to sign players? How many players have you tried to sign and things haven't worked out?
Parecía que un equipo, en concreto el Real Madrid, iba a estar muy por encima del resto, pues ahora...
And look, after 15 days, it looked like Real Madrid were going to be way above the rest of the teams, but look what happened to them the other day. Perhaps they're not as good as they thought they were. So does that make Barça favourites to win the league? I'm not going to talk about Champions League, that hasn't started yet, but the league?
No, del esquema podríamos decir que hicimos al principio. Yo creo que hemos hecho, yo diría que todo, ¿no? Lo que teníamos planteado, al margen de otras situaciones que se han podido dar, que hemos tenido que actuar en función de algo.
Well, I think really where we've really attacked with transfers, I think we've really got everything that we wanted to get. Obviously, there were all kinds of different options that we had to play with, but I think generally we've come out of this with what we wanted. Well, if we go back to April, what we knew, players whose contracts are ending, players who might be interested in coming here, players that we had the resources to sign, I think generally things have worked out as well as they could have done.
Teléfonos a los que le hemos llamado nos han respondido en todos.
When it comes to actually picking up the telephone and phoning people, people have responded as we've wanted to.
De naturaleza bastante realista.
You know, I like to be realistic
En el presente.
Regarding possibilities.
También me lleva a que cuando acabe esta rueda de prensa pueda coger vacaciones por primera vez en 4 años.
Because in fact, one thing's happening is as soon as this press conference ends, I've actually got a holiday, my first holiday for 5 years. So I'm looking forward to that, I have to say, and I'll be back in mid-September. Ask me that question again, maybe. But right now, I think it's too early in the season to comment on that. Although I'm not sure if I'm going to say much about the past, but I must admit I'm happy with the current situation. Obviously, you know, it's positive at the moment. We're happy with things are. I prefer the situation in the league as it is now than the opposite.
Andoni, una pregunta y una duda. La pregunta respecto a lo que te comentaba David Bernabé hace un rato, decías que no mirabas al pasado, sino al presente o al futuro a la hora de mirar si te has equivocado, has cometido errores o no. La remodelación profunda de la plantilla que se ha hecho este año, de cara a esta próxima temporada, ¿se ha hecho solo pensando en el futuro o también después del análisis?
You say that you don't like to look at the past. Are you saying that you've put together a squad this year only thinking of the future and not thinking about the past? Oh, look, you know, I mean, what I had to do, I had to get a team that was ready to compete in the 2014-2015 season. That's the important thing, but obviously you remember decisions that you made in the past, you know, and people speak to you and they're always talking about things that happened in the past, you know. I mean, obviously, let's not get ridiculous that things happened 3 years ago, that you're not going to think about those things. But, I mean, if you'd asked me 3 years ago who I thought would be the goalkeeper this season, I'd have said Victor Valdés. Well, look how things have changed. Certain circumstances are different. He's not here anymore. So you always have to be prepared for different things in football. Yeah, let's just close things and simplify things in the way that you're saying. You never know. There are going to be injuries. There are going to be suspensions. You know how games work, you know, I mean, you can have a player sent off for handball in the first minute of the game. Well, we had Mascherano sent off in the game the other day against Elche. These are the kind of things that you can't prepare for. And it's the same on the pitch as off the pitch.
Hemos hablado a nivel de incorporaciones de futuro que no se podrían. En caso de posibles marchas, de que algún jugador de aquí a un año pueda decir...
Okay, so we're talking about the FIFA suspension. So what happens now if the players that we've got decide they want to leave? Let's face it, we've got to analyse each case separately. But we know how and where we stand with the suspension. We're making an appeal. But we need to look into each player's situation one by one, assuming that the suspension does ultimately go ahead.
Buenos días, Andoni y Jordi. Xavi Hernández para el diario ABC. Las dos preguntas son para Andoni. La primera es si de la misma forma que estás de acuerdo con Bartomeu en que el fichaje de la temporada, uno de los más importantes, es Luis Enrique. si también crees que Tata Martino veía el fútbol diferente.
Okay, you agree that Luis Enrique was the most important signing of the season, or suggested. So do you think that Tata Martino perhaps didn't understand the first team?
Para ser utillero del primer equipo, ¿qué hay que hacer?
And the other question is, what do you need to be the kit man at the club?
El nombre lo publicó Messi en Instagram del sustituto de Chema Corbella, y ello ha salido publicado que es el primo de Gerard Piqué.
No, yo creo que debemos ser el único equipo del mundo que
the central player,
que hablamos de una, y al final acabamos hablando del utillero. Está bien, porque demuestra en realidad la riqueza humana que tiene este club, ¿no? Y eso está bien, hay que aceptarlo como tal, pero
the utility player. He's saying that it's been said that it wasn't Messi, perhaps it was Piqué.
Que hace las cosas con tranquilidad, pero las cosas ya están hechas, incluso si te puedes avanzar a los deseos del cliente, por decirlo de alguna forma. Ya está, nada más, no creo. Y la otra pregunta, perdona, era...
Has comprobado, igual que Bartomeu, que Tata veía el fútbol de forma diferente a cómo se ve aquí en Barcelona.
Mira, yo creo que el Tata
he's repeating the question before, but going back to Tata Martino, I'd like to say that he did a wonderful job. He came at a very difficult time. It was very tough for him because of the situation with Tito's illness. It was very, very difficult because of the whole situation. It was a very difficult challenge for him to take, and the fact he took on that challenge shows what he was as a person, what a strong character he was. Okay, as for what he sees in the team, how he felt about football, I have to say that we learned a lot about football by having him here. I learned a lot about football by having him here.
Hola, Albert Llimós, Diari Ara. Dues preguntes. La primera ha dit el senyor Zubizarreta que s'ha fet tot el que ens havíem plantejat. Llavors, Marquinhos, del qual sí que em va parlar a Esports 3 en una entrevista, mai ha arribat a ser una realitat, a establir-se una negociació?
Vuelvo a decir que aquellas operaciones que nosotros no hemos completado, no...
Again, asking about transfers, but look, Zubizarreta is insisting that if it's a player that we didn't actually transfer, then I don't think it's my position here to be speaking about those things. You're asking about Arsenio. Okay, I will admit that yes, there was contact there, but he decided that he didn't want to come. Mallorca didn't want to sell him, and that's as far as it goes. I mean, what can we say?
Segona, només un detall. Es podria haver fet millor des del punt de vista humà, sobretot per les publicacions que han aparegut en els darrers mesos, la gestió dels adeus, per exemple, del Guillermo i de...
Do you think that the way people have left the club, you know, like Guillermo Amor, with Denis Suarez and things, do you think that perhaps
punto de vista humano
we've not been saying the right thing about saying farewell to certain members of the team?
Perdonad. Es que tengo una voz que me habla. Siempre es difícil.
Been distracted there by some voice saying something that we couldn't hear on the microphone. It's always difficult saying goodbye to people when you have to tell people to leave. Very, very difficult situation. And I've had to do that with as much affection as I can, because obviously we're talking about people that were very close to me, and it's very difficult. I have to say it's not something that makes me happy, no.
Andoni, buenos días, Moisés Llorens del diario AS. Desde abril que estabais dándole vueltas a la manera de reformar o remodelar la plantilla, si se te hubieran puesto a tiro Xavi Alonso o Di María, hubiese sido, o entiendes que el Madrid se haya hecho de Xavi Alonso o de Di María?
If there had been an option of signing Di María or Xabi Alonso, would he have made an approach? But again, Zubi's saying that would be a great question to ask Madrid about what the hell they've been doing with their players this season. But please don't ask me about them. We don't know what reasons there were why those two players left Madrid. That's not for me to comment on. But Madrid, I mean, they're an enormous team, highly competitive team. You know, and how bigger your competitors are, the bigger your own history is. Di María and Xabi Alonso, they're two fantastic players. You don't need me to tell you that. One's now at Man United. We won't be playing Man United because they're not in the Champions League this season. The others at Bayern, and yes, we'll be facing each other, but there's nothing more for me to say on that.
¿Y qué sensaciones tienes? El Messi actual.
Messi, as he is now, the one who started the season. What do you think about him?
Le admiro porque creo que es un jugador que continuamente
I
juega
admire Messi
contra
because
el
I
mejor
think
recuerdo que podemos, contra el mejor Messi que nosotros recordemos.
is always
Y el mejor Messi que
competing not
nosotros
just
recordamos
against the other
siempre
team,
tiene un punto
but
de
against
magia
the Messi of the past, who's the greatest, most magical player we've ever seen. And to be able to play as well as that player himself, Messi, is so difficult, and yet he continues doing that. He's possibly the greatest footballer we're ever going to have here, and we're so lucky that we've got him, but also the rest of the team, and the rest of the team also appreciate that he's here to have such a competitive and fantastic player among us.
Para Bein Sports. Si no he calculado mal, el gasto neto este verano, con incorporaciones y con ventas, es de 78,2 millones de euros.
Net balance this year is 78 million. Is that what the club had planned to spend this season? Or is it a bit more than perhaps you planned for because of the FIFA suspension?
Bueno, lo que te diría es que la diferencia de lo que hemos comentado como ingreso y lo que ha costado las incorporaciones no es al 100%. Aquí
the balance is never going to be 100%.
Sería una pregunta más para el área económica.
Really, it's a question you'd have to ask the financial department because you've got all amortizations, you've got the variables, all kinds of other fees, bonuses that it affects everything in a big way. But that's something that really you'd need to wait until the Vice President for Finance makes an official statement, because I can't really comment too precisely on that.
Hola, un par de cuestiones. La primera es saber si ya hay fecha para que Puyol se pueda despedir de la afición, que en el Amber finalmente no se pudo hacer.
Are you going to give Puyol a chance to say goodbye to the fans?
Buscaremos el momento que eso pueda.
Okay, yes, we'll be looking for the time that we can do that. But we know that he said goodbye to the press with that extraordinary press conference at the end of last season. But we know that he's a private person who doesn't particularly like big, huge crowd events.
A partir de ahí, ¿existe en ese contrato alguna cláusula que en función del número de partidos que juegue esta temporada se pueda ampliar el contrato una temporada
más?
No,
he dicho, acaba el contrato del 2015.
Dani Alves, is there anything in his contract saying that if he plays a certain number of games, his contract can be extended? No, I've said his contract terminates at 2015.
Bon dia, Laura Brugués, de TV3. Una pregunta per l'Andoni. M'agradaria saber si s'ha parlat de la gestió d'aquests jugadors del filial que estan comptant per al primer equip, com són Munir i Sandro, que s'estan també entrenant amb el primer equip, perquè vam veure l'Eusebio preocupat una mica perquè ell no hi podia comptar i deia això que s'havia de vetllar també per la salut del filial. No sé si s'ha parlat entre...
Munir and Sandro, for example, have been playing in the first team. How do you coordinate this with the B team? Because obviously he's knocking the B team. If you keep taking their best players. No, well, we know that we've got Munir who's capable of competing with the first team, Sandro as well. We've got Samper. They're playing well, and we know that that's partly because of the great job that Eusebio has been doing with the B team. Yes, of course, when they play with the first team, they're not playing with the B team. We know that. We know that. And that's how it's always going to be when you've got a B team like we do. We've got Sergi, we've got Grimaldo, Halilovic. Those are players who are extraordinary players who are very, very young. You must remember that. Most of them, they're not even 20 years old yet. So they need to be kept away from pressure.
Para Andoni, el pasado 19 de agosto, una delegación del Barça acudió a la sede de la FIFA para defender sus derechos en cuanto al caso de los menores. Yo quería saber por qué no fue ningún máximo representante de la dirección deportiva, es decir, usted...
Okay, the 19th of August you went to FIFA to place your case against the FIFA suspension. So why did nobody Why did nobody from the sports department go?
Estuvo el director de la Masía, Carlos Fulguera.
The director of the Masía, Carlos Fulguera,
representante de la dirección
was
deportiva,
there.
no acudió.
So why did Zubizarreta not attend? We had a strategy for who was to lead the appeal, and they decided that those two would be the representatives. We had to go and provide them with the information that they asked for, but I'm not the person who controls the legal department. But I think Barça were perfectly represented at that meeting. Unfortunately, the result wasn't what we wanted, but I don't think it's because we did anything wrong. Okay, that's the end of the question and answer session. Thank you very much to the media here, and I'd also like to thank you at home for listening. And we'll see you for the next streaming session.